Welcome to Racing Gods F1, unauthorized armchair experts, unsolicited views, and ludicrously expensive race cars. Let's dissect the latest news from the Formula One circus.
And we are back with the Racing Gods again. May the Racing Gods be with you. Tyler, how are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
I am doing good. It was a jam-packed Formula One weekend.
Yep.
Without giving things away, I am sorry about the results of the race for you, but I am very excited about the results of the sprint for you.
Yes, yeah.
Do you have any reciprocal comments, given that I'm wearing a McLaren hat?
I'm happy for the race results for you, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, what a crazy weekend. A lot to discuss. We'll jump right in. We've got one practice session, sprint qualifying, sprint race qualifying, and the race itself in China over the weekend. So let's jump in. We got news to talk about as well. Obviously, we're going to have to talk about Liam Lawson here from Red Bull and his lack of performance, but we've got disqualifications, we've got all sorts of stuff. So I'll try to run through practice and things like that pretty quickly. Given that it was a sprint weekend, only one practice session, this is going to be particularly difficult for the rookies this year, don't you think? Coming off a rain-swept Melbourne Grand Prix with, compromised practice sessions, and then straight into China with one practice session.
Tough going. Tough going for the rookies, but I think some of them did all right.
Yeah. I'm particularly worried about Doohan and Lawson, so perhaps we'll talk about them in a little bit. Norris tops that practice session, followed by Leclerc, Piastri, and Hamilton, which is interesting. So right off the bat, the practice session, it looks like Ferrari's up there with the McLarens. No surprise given McLaren's performance in Australia the week before that they're up there, but it's looking like Ferrari's reprieving themselves here in practice one. Moving to the sprint qualifying, this seems to be confirmed, doesn't it, Tyler? What do we know about sprint qualifying?
Lewis Hamilton gets his first pole position for Ferrari.
Somebody in red named Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari gets pole position with sprint qualifying. Leclerc's not far behind there in fourth. Let's jump right through. We then have the sprint race. Hamilton holds it pretty well off the start there. There's a little bit of shuffling. I think if I remember, Verstappen is there, but Piastri eventually passes him. But Hamilton had a stellar race.
He looked really good. Yeah, the car seemed to suit him really well. Yeah, he looked comfortable for sure.
I mean, this is impressive. 6.9 second win. He wins by 6.9 seconds to Piastri, covering, was it 19 laps or 18 laps?
19.
So 19 laps. So really impressive. Good to see Hamilton. Can we call it his first win in Formula One? I know it's only a sprint race, but it certainly felt that way to me. The crowd was pretty happy.
First win in a Ferrari in Formula One, not his first win in Formula One by any means.
Yeah, not his first Grand Prix win, but certainly a victory that was celebrated immensely by the crowd. I wanted to talk about that. I mean, his popularity there just looked unbelievable. I mean, it felt like 50% of the grandstand was a Lewis Hamilton grandstand.
Yeah. Well, and the other 50% seemed like they were McLaren fans. So yeah. They look like they're enjoying their Formula One there in China for sure.
Yeah, and they're becoming kind of like a Japanese crowd, which I mean that with all respect. But the Japanese crowd always has these gadgets. They have, helmets with Formula One cars on the top with DRS flaps that are actually operating on their helmets, and they're dressed up in suits and whatever. And the China Grand Prix this year, the audience seemed to be taking some notes out of the Japanese Grand Prix page book, which was good to see. They were really getting into it. it's a big complex and a lot of people there. I think 200,000 or 300,000 people came through,
Two
which
hundred
is
and 20,000 is what I saw for the weekend attendance, which it's a lot, but when you compare it to like Austin when they're having like 450,000 people for a weekend, you'd think China would be even bigger. But yeah, I mean, it's growing in popularity. It still hasn't caught on like they wanted it to, but it's getting there.
yeah. Look, they definitely seem to be having a good time.
Yeah, I think Zhou Guanyu last year helped a lot with that. So getting the Chinese
Right.
people interested.
Yeah, and they paraded him around in a car again this year, which was great because Zhou Guanyu, or Guan Yu Zhou, as I may mistakenly call him occasionally, but Tyler will correct me. Um, he is the reserve driver for Ferrari as well,
Yes.
so he deservedly got to drive around there, and they made him a bit of a show pony for the crowd, which they enjoyed. Um, so, I mean, that's pretty much the sprint. Hamilton holds his position, wins the race. Piastri starts redeeming his weekend from Melbourne, where he spins out near the end of the race in Melbourne, and hugely disappointing weekend for him. But he comes through here in second in the sprint, so he picks up his first. Well, not his first points, but he gets 7 points after only scoring 2 points in Melbourne. So this is turning out to be so far a good weekend for him. There's Verstappen again. Can't get rid of the man. He's on the podium too in the sprint. And Russell, teetering around on the outside of the podium in fourth was Russell. So trying to think of any other notes from the sprint that I can remember. Anything for you?
No, just yay Hamilton.
Yay Hamilton. Yeah, it really was. I think everybody was pretty excited by that.
It's helping me to come around to become the Lewis fan that I need to be as he's driving this Ferrari because, like I've said, for close to 20 years I've cheered against him. So yeah, it's making it a little easier.
Yeah, for sure. So the setup for this weekend is they have the Friday they have practice one and then sprint qualifying. This sprint race was on the Saturday morning. It's typically how it's done now. So they get out of the car, they have a few hours off, and they come back in the afternoon for qualifying for the main race. For those that are interested, last year, or in fact, I think the year before last, the sprint race actually was the qualifying for the race, and that format was shuffled last year, if I'm remembering that correct, Tyler, to have it as a kind of a separate event. So they have qualifying in the afternoon. What do we know about qualifying, Tyler? What do you remember there?
Well, the McLarens looked a lot better than the Ferraris. That's for sure.
Yeah, Q1, we lose a couple of rookies, and this is a talking point of the weekend. But
yeah, Liam Lawson.
This is
could
right.
Not get out of Q1 again. Yeah.
Not only could not get out of Q1, Liam Lawson is 20th in Q1 for the main race. In fact, let me go back to sprint qualifying and see what we had there, because I think he was on the back end too. 20th in the sprint qualifying as well. So this means I think he was 18th or 19th in Australia in qualifying.
I think so.
I can go back. I can have a quick look here. Qualifying in Australia. Qualifying in Australia, he was 18th. 18th. So it's turning out to be a difficult year, as we will discuss in a little bit here. So Mr. Lawson is in 20th position. Three other rookies. We've got 19th Gabriele Bortoletto, and the Kick Sauber is 19th in qualifying. Jack Doohan can only pull out 18th, but Gasly's only a couple of positions ahead of him in the other Alpine in 16th. And Oliver Behrman is 17th. So we lose Gasly, Behrman, Doohan, Bortoletto, and Lawson in Q1. This does mean, though, that going through to Q2, in terms of the rookies, it's a big year to talk about rookies still. Hadjar and Antonelli make their way through to Q2. That's 2 weeks in a row for Hadjar,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
which is impressive. Both the Racing Bulls make it into Q2. In fact, they both make it into Q3. So we lose in Q2. We lose Ocon and the Haas. They have a good weekend, as we'll discuss. Hulkenberg in the Kick-Sauber, Alonso and Stroll, and Sainz is knocked out in 15th in Q2. So trying to speed things along here. Q3, things are quite tight. It's looking strong for the McLarens. Verstappen is, if I remember, was on provisional pole. He's pipped by Piastri. Hang on, no. Actually, Piastri had 2 laps that were worthy of pole position.
Yep.
So he comes in second. Norris actually comes through and pips Verstappen. So we're tentatively looking at a Piastri, Norris, Verstappen start for the race. But there he is,
George
right
Russell.
at the last second. Did you get the feeling before George Russell in the Mercedes comes through and splits the McLarens by 800ths of a second?
Yeah.
It was almost like the commentators had just written it all off, like it's done. It's a McLaren front row. That I don't think they really thought that George was going to do this. So it really is impressive with George. He's skipping ahead. He gets a podium here. He had a podium in Australia. In the sprint, he was 4th. He's sitting in terms of the overall championship. Is he 3rd or 4th in the standings? He is 3rd in the overall championship still. So very much the quiet achiever. Just incredible performances, consistent performances coming out of George, in my opinion, Mr. Tyler.
Yeah, well, I think he's picking up. He had beaten Lewis last year too, but like with Lewis gone, I think he's picking up the drivers, grabbing that steering wheel and driving on with the lead car and Mercedes. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The lead driver, the genuine, deserved lead driver of Mercedes now, for sure. So we'll jump to the race. I guess the beginning is important. We've got off the line. There was a little bit of pressure from Verstappen off the line. I'm trying to think.
Well, Norris dropped back right away.
That's right.
Hamilton and Leclerc had a little get together, and it broke the end plate off of Leclerc's wing to start. Turn 1, boom, there you go, broken wing. But miraculously held on to that wing throughout the whole race.
Yeah,
and
it was
didn't seem to be too
wasn't
detrimental to his performance. So actually, wasn't bad.
And eventually Hamilton actually lets Leclerc through, even though Leclerc has got that damage on the front right end plate of his front wing. It kind of made you feel like, maybe he lost half a kilo of weight there. In fact, I think given what happens later on in the race, we learned it's 200 grams of weight from that end plate. But the end plate, the wing is then pressing so much on the ground. It made you think maybe he was getting a different positive downforce effect from it somehow.
Well, yeah, because it was on everybody's front left was wearing out so bad, and that's where he had the damage. So you almost make it think like, well, it didn't put as much pressure on that front left that it was able to last just a little bit longer, even though he didn't have the downforce. Kind of a little bit of give and take there. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Either that, we got to credit it. It is Charles Leclerc, an incredible driver, so maybe he's just is that good. But it did not seem to affect him too negatively. In fact, he ends up doing a one-stopper, which is something we'll quickly bring up. This race was anticipated to be a two-stop race. Ends up being a one-stop race for most.
The majority of them,
which again caused some issues and disqualifications.
Yeah. It didn't. Yeah. I know that
Gasly,
when Leclerc got disqualified for being light, they were able to change a front wing for front wing so that he got that extra weight back that he was missing on the end plate. But they're thinking that, it's almost kind of like Belgium last year where Russell lost out on the win, where the tire wear, that much wear off the tires took that much weight away from the car, and he
didn't
ended
pick
up
up
being
enough.
a kilo underweight.
Yeah, I didn't pick up enough marbles on the way back
Yeah.
to the. Yeah,
Well, I was looking
you
at
think
everybody's tires, when they came back, and it didn't look like anybody was picking up any marbles. The tires looked clean when they came back, and I don't
yeah.
know why. If all the rubber was just laid into that new surface that they put on the track that it just didn't have anything to pick up. I don't know.
This was something that was brought up all weekend. Was it was a new surface in China. All the drivers seemed to be impressed with it. They constantly called it very grippy in a positive way, but I guess that leads to more tire drag. We should also clarify when we're talking about the marbles, we're talking about all the shredded rubber that comes off the tires and is kind of pushed to the side of the track. We learnt this last year when George Russell was disqualified. His car was underweight after doing a one stop. So instead of having a fresh second or a fresher second set of tires that would have been heavier when he's weighed at the end of the race, he ended up being underweight and being disqualified. And part of the strategy there is during the cool down lap, the cars will go around and they'll swerve off to the side of the track. The tires are hot and they pick up some of that rubbery crap on the side, which we call the marbles. So just throwing that in there for our listeners, or one of them. So, yeah, and why this becomes an issue is we'll go through the race. I mean, this was not the most amazing race we've seen. Um, you know, uh, should we jump to the end, work our way back?
Well, I was just going to bring up. I didn't know how you wanted to address it, but I was going to bring up Oliver Behrman was on a tear there in the second half of the
Yeah,
race when he got his tires on, and I thought he looked really good.
ciao,
Ciao, twice. Ciao.
ciao.
He apologized
So,
for that later in the race or after the race. I think he was a little
yeah,
embarrassed for having said that, but hey, you know, heat of the
yeah,
moment, a little adrenaline going. Say what you got to say.
yeah. So we're talking about Oliver Behrman, another rookie. Here we are discussing rookies again. He had a couple of races last year with Ferrari and Haas. He's now a Haas driver, but stellar result for Haas. Let's just jump in and discuss Haas, seeing as we're talking about Behrman. Um, they end up with Ocon being fifth with 10 points and Behrman being eighth with four
Great
points.
result.
This is of course after Hamilton
Yeah.
in the Ferrari, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari are disqualified. Hamilton for his plate being too thin, the grinding plate. What do we call it?
The plank. Yeah.
The blank. Thank you. His blank is like what was it? Like half a millimeter
Half a
thinner than
millimeter. I mean,
unreal.
you
Yeah,
know, I
like
don't know if you can,
thickness
yeah.
of paint.
Yeah.
The
Thickness
thickness
of a
of
credit
paint.
card. Yeah.
Yeah, not even, and he's disqualified. Charles Leclerc is disqualified for being underweight. Again, we've discussed that. This is probably because it was a one-stopper. And then
Yeah.
Pierre Gasly as well, who I think did come I think he was 10th perhaps, before he was disqualified. So this promotes drivers, including Sainz, into 10th. And then Behrman and Albon uh, are also promoted up the rankings there. But ends up being a great weekend for Haas with Ocon and Behrman both getting a haul of points there. Back to the Chow point, though. Behrman is one of the last to pit. He took those tires to 30 or 40 laps, something crazy.
Wow.
He pits and comes out with a fresh set of mediums and just starts ripping his way through the back end, uh, overtaking car after car. But for some reason, he's decided every time he passes a car to call out on the radio, "Ciao," At least they broadcast that twice,
Yeah,
and then in the interviews afterwards, he says he feels a little bit bad about it. But I
yeah.
think it's his signature. I think it's his signature now.
Might as well be. I mean, why not?
Yeah. Well, he
Science
is
is a
part of
smooth
the
operator, and Behrman likes to say ciao.
yeah. Well, he is part of the Italian the Ferrari junior team, so he has spent a lot of time in Italy. So
Yeah.
I think
They do
he's
say he
allowed to
speaks.
do
Yeah, he
that.
does speak Italian too. So yeah, it just comes natural.
Yeah. So I guess we've knocked off Haas. We'll go back to
Sure.
the bottom here, and I'll quickly go through that. We got the DQs, which we've discussed: Hamilton, Leclerc, Gasly. Um, Really disappointing for next is the Racing Bulls with Tsunoda is the last one was not DNF or disqualified to come in there, and he deserved, in my mind, he deserved so much more than that. He had a great weekend, qualified. Let's see, he qualified ninth, and I think for most of the race, he even got ahead of Hadjar in the other Racing Bull, who qualified seventh. And Tsunoda, by the end of lap one or two, I think was ahead of Hadjar. Uh, but somehow they're one of the few teams who, late in the game, decide that it still is a two-stop strategy, and they pit, and no one else does.
Yeah,
And it
they
just
missed
is.
out on. Yeah, it didn't work out for him. They're like, hey, how come nobody else is pitting? I thought we all agreed.
Yeah, so devastating for Tsunoda, which is interesting because maybe we'll have a little bit of more of a talk about Tsunoda in a minute when we get through this of what might be happening in Japan
Yeah,
next week.
never know.
Um,
Yeah.
so Tsunoda's 16th. Hulkenberg and Bortoleto, the kick salvers, were kind of anonymous back there, 14th and 15th after the disqualification. So this really means they finished 17th and 18th. Um, I can't remember what happened there. Did Hulkenberg spin? Bortoleto spin somewhere in the race. Do you remember?
I
Anonymous, as I said.
yeah should know better, but
Yeah.
no, I don't.
Oh, you know what? I know what it is. Looking now that Doohan was 13th, which would have been 16th on the road. Doohan bumped into
Hulkenberg,
Bortoleto.
Bortoleto.
Was it Hulkenberg or Bortoleto? I'm gonna have to Google it.
Oh darn
Um,
it!
but he spins one of the
Yeah, one of the
one
kick
of the kick
salvers.
salvers, and this is interesting because um, he gets 4 points.
Hmm.
He's he's now got 4 points on his license, which to explain that this is penalty points. You can only have 12 penalty points before you are disqualified for a race. And I guess one way to look at this is he's only completed one race this year
Yeah,
because he
yeah,
he was knocked out in lap one in Australia.
yep,
So this is really his first race, and he's already got 4 points on his
yeah. Not
license.
looking good. Not a good start, but
And this is also interesting because the pressure is on this man.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I'd heard that one of Franco Colapinto's sponsors, I can't recall exactly what it is, but it's apparently got a yellow and black logo or something like that, is already appearing around the garage in Alpine. So it's almost like they're already moving in
yeah.
the Franco Colapinto team here. Um, so again, to put this in context, the pressure is on Jack Doohan. He's a young Australian driver, rookie with Alpine. It seems behind the scenes that he's pretty much got 5 races, which now are 2 races down. So he's got 3 races to pull off a miracle, or they're going to swap him out with Franco Colapinto from Brazil, who is the reserve driver at Alpine. Just doesn't seem fair to me. But I can't imagine that pressure, Tyler.
It's ruthless. It's a ruthless business. I mean, when you're doing good, and when you're not, they'll replace you just as quick. So yeah, it's it's too bad, but that's just the way it is. There's lots of names that we could probably go through over the last decade of people that who was that? Don't remember that guy. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah, that would be a pretty quick career, Formula One career, if this happens. He seems like such a nice guy. We personally talked to him as well, didn't we, in the paddock last
yeah,
year? And you had the Australian flag that he signed, which
Yep, got
thank
him
you
to
for
sign
that,
that
by
for
the
your
way.
son. Yep, you bet, you
He,
bet.
Mr. Tyler gets the Australian flag signed by Daniel Ricciardo, Jack Doohan, and Oscar
Yeah,
Piastri had
yep.
signed it as well. Yes, we have that at the house that is going to go in a frame. Um, but yeah, that's a lot of pressure on Jack Doohan for this young rookie. And quite honestly, the rumors are getting stronger and stronger, and the sources of those rumors seem to be what's the word? Valid.
Viable, yeah, valid.
Yeah, viable, real. Which is sad because I think the guy deserves more than that.
Mm.
I think it's down to money more than, oh, lo and behold, Formula One down to money,
Yeah, right.
not
Yeah.
merit.
Hmm.
But I think it's the sponsorship enticement with Franco Colapinto, with the whole of Brazil behind him, somehow is more enticing for them than little old Australia for Jackie Doohan.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so moving up, 12th is Lawson. So Lawson's race was really a test, from what we understand. He starts in the pit lane after his very disappointing qualifying, coming in last in qualifying. He starts in the pit lane. From what I understand, they completely changed the car.
Pretty
They
much
just
everything.
decided we're going
Yeah.
to,
Yep.
yeah, and they let him fly, but doesn't seem to do much. Although I'm surprised that he actually finished in 12th here. I mean, obviously that was what 15th
Team, yeah,
on the
which
road without the
still isn't great.
DQs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so, do we talk about him now or come back? Because there is a lot to talk about with him.
Let's get
Um,
it. Let's do it. Might as well
let's
because we're
do it.
here. So
All right. What do we know, Tyler? What's going on
big
with
rumors
Liam?
that Yuki Tsunoda may be taking his seat come Japan in another week and a half's time, which I haven't seen anything solid. It's all been rumors and clickbait on the internet. But uh,
I think what would,
the thing
yeah,
about it is Lawson hasn't raced on either of these two previous tracks. He has raced in Japan before, so he knows that track. So not making excuses for him, but maybe with familiarity to Japan, he might do better. But he's got to get that
I,
chance. If they can't swap him with Tsunoda, and then you'll never know. So I say give him a chance, but that's just my opinion.
I think I'm hoping that wise heads prevail as well with that issue. I think it's negative all around if they swap him out in Japan. Here's why. I think there's evidence to suggest that Racing Bull car is more stable, easier to drive, just potentially a better car than the Red Bull right
Yeah, I
now.
mean, they could put Tsunoda in that car, and he could be
He could flunk it.
struggling just as much as Lawson is because the car seems to be difficult to drive. Yeah.
Right, at his home Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So he turns up in Japan at his home Grand Prix. They think they're doing him a favor by putting him in what they think is a better car, but there's actually a bit of talk around the paddock, and Jolyon Palmer, who's one of the F1 experts and commentators, had a few interesting things to say about it too, which I'll mention. But they're really wondering. They're actually proposing what would the Racing Bull be like if they put Max Verstappen in it. Jolyon Palmer was dropping that on the commentary, saying like,
Wow.
"Hey, he's like, what I want to see is I want to see Max Verstappen driving the Racing Bull, because he's saying if Yuki Tsunoda is within 2/10 of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull right now, he's like, I can't see how Max Verstappen in the Racing Bull would not be better than 2/10 ahead,
Yeah.
meaning the Racing Bull theoretically could be faster than the Red Bull. Isn't that astounding?
That's a crazy thought because I know you watch the F1 feed. I watch the Sky Sports feed. So I have different commentators than you do when I'm watching the race. So I hadn't heard
Yeah,
that. And that's very interesting. That's actually, I'd love to see that.
yeah. Wouldn't that be awesome? you know, but they talk constantly about the fact that Max Verstappen likes a sharp front end, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, but apparently Liam Lawson does as well, which is why they were choosing him over Yuki. But getting back to your point, I think if you swap Liam out and you throw Yuki into that position, you can't expect him just in a couple of practice sessions in front of his home crowd to tame that beast. When you
Yeah.
look at the way Liam Lawson has thrown the steering wheel around, desperately trying to keep that car under control, and
Yeah.
it really does appear that Max Verstappen is the only one who can drive the Red Bull.
Well, they've built that
And
car
he's
around him for 4 or 5 years now, and of course it's going to suit Max. So yeah, I don't think I say leave everything as it is. Leave everybody
I'm
where
with
they're
you.
at. Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Here's what's
But I'm not in
interesting,
charge
though.
either. I don't get paid to make the big bucks to make those decisions.
Not yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Yeah, right.
Racing Guards F1 does not have its own Formula One team yet.
Oh my.
You know, when we publish this podcast, I use the AI tools of Riverside, which we record this on, that provide notes for the show, and it provides chapter headings and things like that. I know this one's going to be Racing Guards F1 contemplate F1 team will be a chapter.
Right.
I love it. I love it. I hope it does. I hope it does. But what I was going to say, you know, are these rumors? Where are they coming from? How much credibility do we give to it? Well, here's a couple of things that I found interesting. Christian Horner, the principal of Red Bull, when he's asked about it, he could simply say, no, Liam Lawson is going to drive in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
We've got his back. He didn't say that. He was asked multiple times, and he just simply did not say that. He danced around it.
Yep.
He said, oh, we got a lot of data to go over, or
Yep.
whatever, which
Heard that a
means
lot. Heard that a lot. We got
I'm
data
like,
to go over. Yeah.
it's like, Christian, this is an easy question. You got to have the kids back and just say, no, he's going to be driving in Japan. It's too early. Give the kid a break.
Yeah.
Of course, Red Bull being Red Bull did not say that.
Yeah, but come
Crazy.
on, give the kid a break. Seriously, right?
That's my thoughts. Yeah. Helmut Marko does not help the situation
Never
much
had.
either.
No.
Yeah. But the first that I kind of heard about this rumor, my son showed me a picture of Yuki Tsunoda in a Red Bull outfit, you know, standing
I've
there.
seen those. Yeah, I've seen that.
And I'm like, I mean, pretty easy to do these days. But I'm like, well, what was the source of that? And it was actually ESPN. So I'm thinking, all right, well, it's somewhat credible. But again, when you read through it, it all goes back to the fact that Christian Horner just did not commit to saying once and for all that Liam Lawson would drive in Japan next week.
They're going to do what they can to get you to read that article and to pay attention to their sponsors on their websites. So, yeah.
Well, they successfully did that because it's the talking point here. It's the talking point on many other podcasts.
Every time I see a headline pop up, I go to the F1 app and nothing's there. So they're going to be the ones that if it's there, I'll believe it. So
well, the F1 app does have articles on this, but it goes back again to just the fact that it really just has the interview with Christian Horner right after the race.
It's going to say breaking news and Tsunoda in for Lawson or something if it's real.
Yeah.
So.
There's an analysis, actually, I'm just looking on the F1's page right now from Jolyon Palmer about the situation as well, which I did read. He's on board with our plan. I think he listened to us. Tyler, he also suggested that they should keep.
Yeah, it's the logical choice. I mean, you had one, fluke of a race in Australia with the rain. We've had one real race here in China with the track he's not familiar with. Everybody take a deep breath, step back. Let's go to Japan and see what happens.
I'm not saying, quite honestly, that I think Liam Lawson is going to suddenly become, in even the top 5 or anything next week in Japan. But I just don't think anything is going to be. But I just don't think anything is going to be achieved by demoting him and putting Yuki up there next week.
Not at all. Not at all. Yuki could do the same thing. New car, he could end up in the bottom
Yeah, again,
5 again in Q1. So who knows?
it might make him look like a schmuck when he's just getting used to the Red Bull. He seems to be extracting an incredible amount out of the racing bull. He
Racing
seems
Bull.
to be
Yeah.
extracting everything out of that racing bull. Very competitive.
Yep.
I feel like he's got momentum in there, and it's his home race. Let him stay in something that he's comfortable with and can achieve a lot. And hopefully, maybe he'll even podium in Japan in the racing.
And it's that
bulls.
paint job too. I'm telling you, man, it's that paint job.
It's the paint job. It's the livery. It's that white livery.
It looks so good.
2/10.
It looks so
I think
good.
you know what? It was 2/10 last week. I'm going up. It's 2.5 tenths now.
All right.
3/10.
Sounds good.
Sounds 3/10 because of the paint job. So that covers Lawson, and moving. 11th in the race was Hadjar in the other racing bull. So even with the demotion or the disqualifications, he's in 11th. Still a pretty solid weekend, and bear in mind that was an 11th. Yeah, disqualifications taken into account.
Hey,
but that was with two pit stops.
Yeah,
so
and he just finished outside the points. Yeah, after not even getting through turn 2 in Australia. So I'd say that's a huge improvement for him. It's got to feel good.
So let's do a quick evaluation here. He finishes in 11th, 78 seconds behind the leader. But he would have lost, 22, 25 seconds with that second pit stop?
Yes, yeah.
Let's go with 20 seconds. I'm going to deduct 20 seconds and see where he would, because 10th place was 76, 9th place 70 seconds, 8th place 61. So he would have finished, call it 58 seconds. He would have finished between Albon and Bam, and he would have finished 8th.
There you go.
Possibly
he have gotten that far up
even 7th.
On that old set of tires too.
But he would have been on old tires with everybody else. I mean, they were there before they pitted. In my opinion, I don't think he would have.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. There are other things to consider. That's true. So that's Hadjar with the disqualifications. It pushes Sainz up into 10th. Not a great weekend for him again. Poor old Mr. Sainz. 13th on the road without the disqualifications.
Yep.
Ends up getting a point with the disqualifications, but what do you think's going on there? Just needs a little bit of time to settle in?
A little bit. I mean, he looked good in preseason testing. He looked strong in Australia before he put it in the wall. Looked good that he would have been good for the race. Yeah, I mean, just give him some more time too. I mean, all these guys are in new cars. I mean, like we said before, only 2 teams kept their lineups from last year, so a lot of people in new cars getting used to new teams. It's going to take a little time, but I will say that Kimi Antonelli, not to jump ahead, is doing quite well in a new car as a rookie in a new team.
I think out of the rookies, you got to rate him pretty highly this year. It's not just where he's finishing; it's the lack of attention that he draws to himself.
Yeah,
He just seems calm. There's something special about that kid.
Well, plus being at Mercedes doesn't hurt either. That's a professional squad there. It's always, look at their race results speak for themselves over the last decade.
Yeah, so Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes, the new rookie, second driver to Russell, if you like. He comes in 6th with 8 points. What's interesting is he had damage on his car from lap 1 or 2. I was hearing on one of the news outlets, and they didn't let him know. They didn't
I didn't know that either, really.
Yeah. So taking that into account, I don't know what he lost in downforce, but surely over a 58, 59 lap race that probably had to be 5 or 6 seconds, you would think, which would have put him in 5th. Behind Verstappen. Verstappen finishes 16 seconds behind the leader, and then there's a gap between Verstappen and Ocon and 50 seconds.
Yeah.
Again, we would have had the DQs between there and Ocon, I think.
Yeah.
But he would have been up the rankings, even if the 2 Ferraris finished. I think he still would have been up there 6th or something like that. But definitely impressed with him. So we skipped over the other Williams, which brings up the point, no pun intended, that Williams scored double points in this race. Again, taking into account the disqualifications of the Ferraris and Gasly, but good weekend. Good weekend for James Vowles, Alex Albon, and Carlos Sainz in the Williams team. Doran and Capital will be happy about that, the owners of Williams. Turning out to be a good investment this year, I think.
So far.
Yeah. Behrman we've discussed in eighth. Even though Antonelli for some reason got driver of the day, I feel like Behrman would have been
a good candidate for that.
It would have been a good candidate for driver of the day.
Because I mean, I was more impressed with Behrman's passing there at the end than I was anything Antonelli did during the race, other than just kind of being solid.
Yeah, it was an odd one to see that Antonelli got driver of the day. Even Bono, his Pete Bonington, his race engineer on the radio said, "Well, it must be your good looks, Kimmy." And at that point, Toto, the team principal of Mercedes, gets on the radio and says, "Your good looks too, Bono," or something like that. So they were as befuddled as many of us were as to why Kimi Antonelli got driver of the day.
Yeah.
But again, he took it in his stride too. He didn't make a big deal about it. He's just kind of like, whatever.
I mean, it's a popularity vote. It's really all it is, and you get nothing. You get no points for it. No, increase in your standings whatsoever. It's just, I think it's more, just a popularity contest among the fans, and good for him.
Yeah, for sure. Deserved one way or another. Ocon in fifth. We've already discussed that. Great weekend for Haas. There's Verstappen again. Verstappen comes in fourth. He was describing his car all weekend as being the fourth fastest car, and there was debate whether that's the case. I think it's only the fourth fastest car in his hands. I think out of his hand, clearly out of his hands, it's like the slowest car if you take Lawson's performance. But he's still there. Ends up in fourth position. And there he is, Antonelli's other teammate, George Russell, third again. I just think George Russell might be the most underrated Formula One driver out there. Tyler, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. He's you don't hear much about him. He just goes each weekend, drives his car, does the best he can. He doesn't make a big fuss about a whole lot. I know there was drama last year between him and Verstappen, whatever. But this year it's just keep it low key, put your head down, drive your car, and he's getting the results. And looks good.
Yeah, look,
he'll win a race. It's going to happen. Yeah. Well, all we need is some shenanigans in the front, and he's probably going to be the third car there waiting to pick up the pieces. Yeah, I'm waiting, not to jump ahead, and create some drama this year, but I think at one point this year, I'm sure Piastri and Norris are going to come together, I think. I don't know. It's inevitable when you have two drivers that are at the front all the time. Sooner or later it happens. I mean, look at the famous one with Rosberg and Hamilton at Barcelona years ago when they took each other out. It's going to happen.
Can we go back?
No bad luck. I'm wishing no bad luck on anyone, but I just feel it'll happen. Yeah.
Can we go back? We can go back further. Ayrton Senna or Alain Prost. I mean,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Look, I knew that was where you're going, and absolutely, and I think what's interesting is I think the team is just fully aware of this too. I mean, clearly they are.
Papaya rules.
Papaya
you don't
rules.
Talk about that without it being an issue.
Yeah. And Piastri did some really phenomenal aggressive starts last year from second and got in front of Norris and things like that. But they're also being super cautious this year. They've already had team orders in Australia when Piastri was coming up behind Norris, hold your position until it dries up a little bit. But he was far enough ahead. He was consistently, 3 seconds ahead of. We're talking about Piastri in the McLaren being 3 seconds 3 seconds ahead of Norris for most of the race. Norris never really got close enough to challenge him in DRS. But it also seemed, I don't know if you agree with me here, but when Norris was talking over the radios, he seemed to be resigned to the fact that he's going to be in 3 seconds behind Piastri. He was kind of like, can he speed up a little bit or whatever? But he was okay with it. He wasn't kind of argumentative.
Well, you could have sped up, but then to get in that zone to pass him, it's going to ruin your tires. And so you can't stay there for too long. So either you got to get up there, make the pass, or you just got to hold position and take what you get. And I think that's what they did.
Yeah. So let's discuss a little bit towards the end of the race there. It's Piastri, Norris, and did Russell pass Verstappen near the end?
I think so. From what I remember, yeah.
Because Verstappen finishes fourth, Russell third, but I feel like it was Verstappen was the threat to Norris. Anyway, I want to discuss Norris's brake pedal issue towards the end there.
Yeah.
So he comes on the radio maybe 5, 6, 7 laps before the end and says, my brake pedal's getting long. The team kind of dismisses it a little bit, but eventually they come back on and they say, yeah, we got a real problem. It's going to increase by a millimeter every lap. And he's got to drive that car with some caution. I think he had about did he have an 11-second gap, and it went down about 2 seconds by the time.
If it would have been a lap longer on that race, he would have lost second place and maybe more.
The old lap longer case.
Yeah. So he's very fortunate that that's how long the race was, and he made it last until he needed to, and came home on the podium, second place.
I feel like there's these bars that have the permanent sign that says free beer tomorrow.
Yes.
There should be a sign somewhere for Formula One, a permanent sign that says 1 lap more.
Yeah. If there had been 1 lap more,
If there was 1 lap more, I would have passed him. If there was 1 lap more,
1 lap less, I could have won the race. Yeah, it goes both ways for sure.
This definitely was a 1 lap more situation. I mean, to lose 7 seconds in a lap because of that brake pedal, it was getting down to the wire for sure.
Well, and it's not good feeling for a driver to know that any second now his brakes could just go out when he's going 200 miles an hour down a straight, and all of a sudden he can't stop. So very fortunate that nothing broke and he was able to hang on and stay safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that kind of covers most of it. I think, one of the main topic of news really is the Lawson issue, the Yuki Tsunoda Lawson issue. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that.
Yep. And the disqualifications that, to go back to that, the underweight thing, people ask, why don't they just throw more fuel in those cars so that they don't come in underweight? Well, every bit of extra fuel that you carry around costs you time. And to just haul it around for no reason, they want to put as little fuel in that car as they can to get you through that race. They anticipate safety cars slowing things down, saving fuel, all kinds of factors. And it just bit Leclerc and Gasly in the butt this time. And
it's interesting though, because you would think after last year with George Russell's disqualification that the idea of a 2-stop turning into a 1-stop and the car then potentially being underweight is not a new phenomenon.
True.
I just would have thought that their strategists would have this calculated out by now, but apparently not.
Yeah, I mean, they got the brain trust at the home base of every team that should be, going over all kinds of calculations to determine this stuff that, I'm sure massive computers that, figure this stuff out.
Right. You think they would at least, call up and say, look, we can't do a 1-stop, or if we do, he needs to spend 20 minutes picking up every marble.
Or just, let off the gas just a little bit more in each turn, keep your position, but save some fuel
in the car. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm trying to think if there's any other news to discuss. I mean, it's just an intriguing thing, the whole Lawson thing. One other thing on the Lawson thing, if they do kick him out, does he get demoted down to Red Bull, to Racing Bulls, or do
I
they
would
just
think
kick
so.
him out?
You gotta. I say he goes down to Racing Bulls, but yeah, that's my thought. He goes down to Racing Bulls.
Because I mean, a lot of the headlines, and again, these are just clickbait headlines for sure right now, but some of them are talking about, you know, him being kicked out, and it would seem extraordinary. I mean, when you think of the history of Red Bull with Gasly being demoted, Albon being
Albon,
demoted, they were all moved from Red Bull down to, you know,
yeah,
what was Toro Rosso and AlphaTauri, and back in the day, now Racing Bulls. So it seemingly would be the obvious thing
yeah,
to do, but
yeah,
it's interesting because this is, you know, he's had 11 races before this as well, and you know, the fact that Yuki's qualifying performance last year was 7-2 over Lawson, meaning he outperformed him 7 to
yeah,
2 in
yeah.
qualifying, and yet they still didn't pick Yuki for the Red Bull. They
Right.
picked Liam Lawson. I can't remember if he was Helmut Marko, the you know, the consultant at Red Bull, whether it was his choice for Liam Lawson or not.
Yeah.
But if he picks somebody, he digs
You
in
know,
pretty
in
heavily.
my
So
opinion, if I'm Yuki Tsunoda, I want to stay put. He's doing good. That car is performing awesome. You know, why go to a super high pressure situation like Red Bull and potentially have a car that you can't drive because it's set up for max? Just stay where you're at and let's see what happens. You know, just because they're the quote unquote lesser team doesn't mean they're not a better team.
yeah, absolutely. If not knowing how to drive a Formula One car, if I turned up there and they said you get to drive one car right now, I think it would be the Racing Bull.
Yeah.
It, you know, I think I'd be going too far to say it looks like it's easy to drive, but it just certainly looks like maybe it's easier to drive. It's certainly
Yeah.
easier to drive than the Red Bull by all accounts. Um, well, it's a good week. We got Japan
Yep.
coming up. I'll be surprised. It's not going to surprise me if we see the same fans in China just
Right.
translated over
All those
to
little
Japan,
flags and
because
toys and things on
yeah,
their heads and
something seems
supporting
similar
their
about
drivers. They love it. They love it. Yep.
all the flags and everything they had. But either way, uh, well, good. Well, may the racing gods be with everybody out there, including you, Tyler.
May they also
We
be
will
with you.
talk soon. Have a good one.
Thank you.